Welcome to Inside College Admission, conversations with admission leaders about matters affecting the college-going process. My name is Peter Van Buskirk, and I am joined today by Susan Ardizzone, who is the Senior Director of Undergraduate Admission at Tufts University. Welcome, Susan.
Thank you, Peter.
Good to have you with us today, and I would imagine that it's an unusual feeling for you to be thinking about college admission right now after having spent months trying to admit a class. Now the decision letters are out. Usually early April is a time of celebration and welcome to your campus. And of course you have the throng of high school juniors getting ready to come by as well. Things are probably pretty quiet right now.
It has been I would have to say, the most unusual month I have spent in my entire professional career. On March 9th, we had lots of visitors to our campus. That evening, we received word from the university that visitors were no longer going to be allowed, that our students were going to have to move, off campus for the rest of the semester. And we moved into virtual visit planning mode while we were still in committee and admitting the class of 2024. So it has been a really, really, again, just really unusual month for me as an admissions professional.
Now, some of the folks I've spoken with indicated that they were just barely able to beat sort of that lockdown, if you will, in terms of getting the decisions posted. But so you, had another week or so to go before, how did you manage that?
Oh, it was, so we were in our last week of committee. So that Friday was Friday the 13th, which seemed apropos. We finished the committee process, and we had that Monday. So that weekend on Sunday, we got the word that they really wanted everyone to move to a remote working atmosphere. So Monday, we had everybody come in and sort of got everybody set with their technical needs. And starting that Tuesday, I started working with a subset of our staff on beginning to plan our April programming we really, at that point, were just focusing on the admitted class, and pretty quickly came up with a jumbo month. Some of you may know that the mascot for Tufts, we're the Tufts Jumbos. We call our admitted student programs Jumbo Days, and we decided, since we couldn't have 3 days, we were going to have a whole month, and have come up with a whole series of programming for students during the month of April. So it was, I was kind of doing double duty, working with that group of staff, but also working with the dean and kind of finalizing and shaping the class of 2024.
Wow. So out of chaos came an opportunity for creativity, right?
That, you know what, it's been really, really, I've been so impressed with our staff. We have some younger recent Tufts grads that have been working with kind of our current students on some programming. We've also worked with faculty, and then just have some really, really creative folks who have been able to kind of think outside the box. We've learned some things along the way, but it's been, knock on wood, so far, it's been a pretty successful, today's the 8 days. So.
Well, you mentioned that the last month has perhaps been the most unusual you'd ever experienced. For me, the month of March has to be maybe the longest month I've ever experienced, just not in actual hours, but in the sense of duration.
For sure. And, I think back, and it seems like every week, when I think back kind of to that March 9th as that last day of visitors on campus, like every week was a different set of challenges, set of decisions. And I think for people both, who work in the office, but then also our external audience, people wanted answers almost immediately. And it was very, very difficult to come up with those answers because, one for, we all, I think now recognize just how unusual this whole situation has been. And I think, I actually didn't start to work remotely until last week because there were just a few of us still in the office. And once I started staying at home, I think the reality of the situation really, really hit me. And, but it has been, that month was really quite a long one and seemed like it was 4 months in 1 month because every week seemed like another month.
Well, and every day was like Groundhog Day.
Exactly.
Seemed to be the same thing all over again. Well, what have been the challenges that you've encountered, though, as you've been focusing on trying to first admit the class and now enroll the class? I would imagine dealing remotely has been one of those things. But how have you managed that as a staff and as an institution?
Yeah. So one of the things that I've done is I've set up a weekly, and I've termed them coffee breaks with every team on staff. We are doing, and that includes one with our support staff. So I quickly realized it was very important to keep a face-to-face connection. So I've done so many Zoom meetings, but it's actually been a really great way to kind of keep in touch with staff, to see them, to talk with them a little bit about work, but also just, what are you watching on Netflix? Have you gotten outside for a walk? So that has been really important. And then also kind of keeping a pulse on, as our virtual events take place, what are students asking? What do they seem to be concerned about? Because what we talked about in the third week in March that seemed to make sense, maybe now kind of in real time, we need to kind of pivot and make some different decisions about the programming or how we're offering the programming. And again, we have a really fabulous team, and folks really have been able to kind of turn on a dime to make some different decisions.
Could you share with us what some of the things were that you've been hearing from the students?
Yeah. So, one thing I have just been really very pleasantly surprised that we've had really great engagement by students. We've been offering some mock classes where we have faculty members who are doing a class for our admitted students, and really have had some great attendance numbers. We've had some student Q&As. Again, students really engaged, asking great questions. I hosted a parent Q&A on Monday night, and we had about 150 parents that signed up for it, and had well over 100 questions that were posted on the Q&A, on the chat function on the Zoom meeting. So it's really been just great to be able to find ways to connect with students and with parents.
So what do the concerns seem to be, sort of categorically? Are you guys going to be open, or are you going to be doing online work? Are you going to change deadlines and that sort of thing? I would imagine a lot of questions.
Yeah. So, I mean, for example, for the parent session, so we allowed parents to submit questions ahead of time, and we kind of grouped them, and there was a lot of questions about the fall. So, are we going to be remote? Has there been a decision made? Questions about tuition. If it is going to be remote, what's the tuition going to be? And we have not yet made a decision about the fall. I do think the questions that parents are asking will be very helpful to university leadership to know what families are thinking about, what they're asking about. There also have been some questions about students taking a gap year. So the Tufts policy, the current Tufts policy, and I want to underscore current, is we have a deadline of June 1st to make that request to do a gap year. And we will only allow students to do a gap year for the year. So they would have to enroll in the fall of 2021. We've had some questions. Can I do it, if it's the fall semester is remote, can I take just a gap year, a gap semester and join in January? And again, sort of we're operating on, what our current policy is, thinking that we are going to be here in the fall, recognizing if it is not going to be a fall in-person semester, that those decisions may have to change. But we're not quite at that point yet.
It does get complicated, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. Yes. Yeah.
Have you made any decisions relative to the normal admission enrollment deadline or the enrollment fees? Obviously there are a couple hundred or so schools that have decided to extend the decision-making period. What's the discussion been like on your campus about that?
Yeah. So we, I think we were, I don't know, lucky and unlucky because we didn't release decisions until March 26th. I believe that was a Thursday. So we were at the very sort of tail end of the regular decision releases. So by that point, there was already a lot of discussion about May 1 versus June 1. And we decided that it, for a lot of reasons, and I'll talk about those, that we were going to stick with May 1. And a couple of those reasons. One, and this actually was not a reason then, but now we realize we're really glad we stuck with May 1 with the impact of the economy being so uncertain that, it will give us time to work with families who initially did not apply for financial aid. And normally if families don't apply for aid prior to admission, we just don't, have the ability to allow those families to apply unless it's a really sort of outstanding circumstance. We have made a change to that policy. We are allowing those families to apply for aid, need to do so by April 15th, and we are going to evaluate them sort of right around May 1. So the fact that we have kept with May 1 is going to allow us to work with those families. It also will allow us to work with students who are on the wait list. It just, for us, didn't seem fair to kind of hold those students in limbo for another month. If we weren't going to know until June 1 what the class was going to look like and then have to go to the wait list. It just seemed like it was kind of extending that uncertainty for a longer period of time than we felt was really fair. We are certainly going to work with families as we get closer to that May 1 deadline that we recognize there are going to be a whole host of reasons why, that may not work for them. We're certainly going to be able and willing to work with those families on a more individual basis.
One of the things that's been fascinating to me in watching all of this unfold is just recalling from my days in admission, so much of what we did when we contemplated the class, the number in the class, the financial aid and dollars to be expended. We worked with models and models that looked historically at patterns that were pretty reliable, actually. I would imagine that those models aren't worth very much right now.
No.
Well, and in light of that uncertainty, then that the wait list seems to fill the void. Does this the year of the wait list?
I think that for us, the jury is still out. We made sure that we had a healthy, viable potential wait list, because as you know, you don't have a wait list until students respond. And I think we feel like, yes, we have that wait list. Although it's been interesting that we've had more definitive answers at this point than we've had in the past. So students either saying yes or no. And, we've got some guesses. We think that students, either they visited, Tufts was kind of in a high spot in their list. then when they sort of look at what their choices are, they're like, yep, Tufts is where I want to go. So let's just, make the decision. Or, they have their list of colleges. Tufts isn't that high on the list. They know, nope, it definitely will not be one of those places. So I'm going to tell them no. So it's been kind of interesting. And I think a little unexpected for us that's kind of where students are right now.
Sometimes the best laid plans, though, still are fail to anticipate what could happen down the road. And this isn't a criticism of any institution, but this whole health and economic crisis is one
Mm-hmm.
without a definitive ending point yet.
Mm-hmm.
So it would seem that, and maybe this is part of your conversations as well, that the whole enrollment process might be somewhat open-ended through the summer and into the fall.
Right. Yes. And, if the university decides to go to a remote fall semester,
Mm-hmm.
If that is the decision, I am sure that we are not going to be the only place that has made that decision. So is that going to mean, okay, Tufts made that decision and lots of our peers in the Boston area and, all over the country have made that decision. So all students are kind of in the same situation. So, families are just going to kind of make it through that fall semester. If it's just certain areas that are, areas of the country
Mm-hmm.
that are going to make that decision. So I think the summer, it makes it a huge unknown.
Well, and that's tricky for you too, because Tufts is drawing internationally. You not only have
Yes.
students coming from 50 states, but all over
Mm-hmm.
the globe. So much as the intent might be there to show up on September 1st, there may
Mm-hmm.
be other factors that intervene.
Right.
So,
Yeah. And one of our provost came out with a letter, and really this was aimed at all enrolling students at Tufts. So we, as you know, have graduate programs and professional schools. And it really was aimed, I think, mostly at the international student cohort that if students are not able to get to campus in the fall, their visa didn't work out, they're from a part of the US that for whatever reason, they're unable to travel. We're open in the fall, but those students cannot get there, that the university is committed to providing an educational experience for them. So, for students, that are coming from overseas, they can't get a visa, that we will work with, with that cohort to make sure that they are part of that incoming class, for the fall semester. And however that might look, but the university's made that commitment.
we talked just a few minutes ago about the financial aid piece and how
Mm-hmm.
really the reality for families has changed in the last 2 weeks with regard to
Mm-hmm.
how they might see their asset and income situations.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any advice that you'd offer to families who are now kind of stuck in that situation where they thought they were going to be okay before, and now
Mm-hmm.
because of maybe a layoff, change in the pension plan, etc.,
Mm-hmm.
they're feeling a different kind of squeeze, and they may not have self-identified previously as needing
Mm-hmm.
assistance. So how do
Mm-hmm.
you advise folks to proceed at this point?
Yeah, so I know that our aid office, they've had a couple of conversations. They've had some conversations with early decision families, so
Mm-hmm.
students that had applied, enrolled in January or in late February through our 2 rounds of early decision, that now we're having some concerns about their family circumstance, and there are some things that we and other places are able to do. Maybe in the families weren't thinking about payment plans. Now that might be an option, a way for them to kind of spread those tuition payments. We're also exploring kind of a one-time kind of a spot award that families might feel like, what, we just need something to kind of get us through the fall.
Right.
And get them through the fall, and they may say, what, that's all we really needed. and we're good now. Or they might get through the fall and say, you know what, no, we're still not really good, and let's, kind of explore what that might look like. So, it is, and our financial aid office, I'm sure every financial aid office, as they're dealing with kind of reconfiguring packages for
Hmm.
current students because of refunds, they've had to do that as they are trying to, as they were trying to package the class of 2024. So they have really been stretched in a lot of different directions.
What can you tell me? You piqued my curiosity about the jumbo April or jumbo month.
Jumbo month, yeah.
Yes. What kinds of things? Well, let me back up. You've got a lot of students who've been admitted. They're psyched, thrilled. They really can't wait
Hmm.
to come back, see the campus,
Hmm.
kick the tires one more time, however you want to look at it. And now they're stuck. They're stuck at home. They're
Hmm.
stuck someplace else. How are you making that experience real for them at a
Hmm.
distance?
Yep. So we've done, some things with social media. We have a whole Instagram uh, month planned out, but it seems like we have been hitting Instagram so much that they think we are a bot. So we've got to figure that out a little bit. We've just broken Instagram, we think. Um, but we've also done some. We have some video that is available for campus. We have a drone tour of campus with a voiceover. We, so those kind of for the visual, and then really at this point the admission staff has done a lot of planning, but we are really kind of taking a step back and wherever possible, allowing our students to, our current students have the ability to interact with our prospective students. We have about 200, I think we've had about 250 students matched up with we're calling like a virtual host. So, where students can kind of have that one-on-one interaction.
Sure.
We have, I'm not even sure how many group me's based on, different interests, affinity groups, all kinds of things. So again, smaller communities, ways for students to interact with one another, because that's important too, that prospective students have that chance to interact with each other. And then also with our current students, with our tour guides and students who would volunteer to help us with our on-campus programming, kind of deploying them in a different way.
So that you've created a high touch environment, even though it's at a physical distance then.
Yes,
Good
right,
stuff.
right.
Is there any quiet speculation among you and your colleagues about when your campus might open again? And I realize that your situation is even more complicated by the virtue of the fact that you're really in an urban setting
Hmm.
where the whole health crisis is more complicated. But is there
Yes,
anybody even
exactly.
hazarding a guess?
I know we have just canceled any people that had signed up for May.
Hmm.
We still had our May, and we have not yet posted our summer calendar.
Hmm.
So definitely through the end of May. We are kind of getting university guidance, kind of monthly about travel and about visitors to campus. So now it is through the end of, I think the travel is through the end of June.
Hmm.
So no travel at all for anybody, faculty or staff. I, will we have visitors on campus in June? I'm not sure, but you're right. We are right now kind of at the, this is our, what the numbers are saying, kind of, we are now, kind of a hot spot. So we need another couple of weeks to kind of see where that is going to take us.
Well, no sooner than you would normally get your recruited class and accepted class situated and settled, then you need to begin thinking about the next one, the class of
Right.
2025.
Yes.
Have you and your team begun to think about the fall, for example, when you would normally be visiting high schools, maybe attending
Hmm.
college fairs, doing credential review sessions, open houses, things that are
Hmm.
still kind of in jeopardy?
Yep. Yeah. So we haven't focused a lot yet on the fall. I think we are all secretly hoping that we can travel. Like the thought of getting on an airplane
Hmm.
right now just seems absolutely glorious to see someplace else. But um, we are actually starting to come up with some plans for some virtual engagement for sophomores and juniors, and also thinking about parents, kind of starting mid-April, and then kind of working through however long that needs to happen.
Hmm.
And we've got some thoughts about different sessions that we might want to offer during the week, and not necessarily kind of the traditional information session. We think that probably would be pretty deadly to sit through for an hour. So we're thinking about some other ways that we might be able to engage juniors, thinking about where they are right now, the kinds of questions they might have. We want to keep it manageable for our staff,
Hmm.
and also thoughtful about students. Some of them are actually still in school while they might be doing it at home. It's really kind of a regular school day for them. So we want to be thoughtful about that, and so thinking about timing, thinking about West Coast, thinking about the international component as well.
It doesn't end. I don't
It
envy
does
you.
not end.
Don't envy you that. Speaking of the rising seniors, the young people who will be in the class of 2025, I'm encountering some questions and some real curiosity about credentialing now, and particularly
Hmm.
testing is an issue. Kids took the PSAT in the fall, then maybe a regular SAT in the middle of the winter, and thought, well, I need to get my scores up a little bit, and then I'll be
Hmm.
all set to apply to Tufts. Now they're not sure whether they're going to have that opportunity to get their scores up a little bit. Uh,
Hmm. Hmm.
has there been much discussion on your campus about how to respond to the situation where the normal testing environment has been compromised and kids might not be able to show the the full strength of what they hoped would be their credential there?
Right. So, while we were finishing the class and developing Jumbo Month, we also decided to go test optional.
Mm.
So that we made that announcement. I think it was the week that we released decisions.
Hmm.
We, just realized there was so much angst among students, among families.
Hmm.
There were some kids that were really lucky. They were able to get that March SAT under their belt. But we also realized there were lots of kids that they were not able, either they hadn't signed up for it, they were thinking about May or June. May, obviously not a possibility. We're not, you know, hopeful that June is a possibility in some places. And it just seemed like the right decision to make. We are, again, once kind of the dust settles a little bit, we're going to come up with some clearer language for juniors about, we still are going to give them the opportunity to submit test scores. They submit test scores, it'll be included in the review of their application. Students who do not include test scores, what does that mean? Sort of what will our expectation be? Still looking at rigor of curriculum, still looking at grades. Those things are continuing, will continue to be very, very important in our process. As will our supplement. We have a two-part supplement, and that has been and will continue to be a really important part of our review process.
It sounds, excuse me, it sounds though like you have some degree of confidence that you can make good decisions without the tests. Otherwise, you wouldn't venture that way. Is that so?
Yes, yeah, I think, we feel like, again, kind of looking at a student's, the curriculum and what they've decided to do in high school, and then that, decision that they're going to make, whether or not they have test scores, whether they've had the opportunity to do that. Um, I'm fairly certain that the Common App is developing a way for students to talk about the impact of COVID-19, for the app that will be released in August, so that we have an understanding of what that means for students individually.
Hmm.
Their school went to pass fail, or they, were the reasons why they were unable to take tests because of, the way it impacted their particular community.
It seems that this academic year, at least 2019 and 20, will be the year known as the one with the asterisk for the
Exactly.
academic
Yes.
record for a lot of the
Yes.
juniors, sophomores, and so on. One of the other, and you alluded to this, I think, with the common application, one of the other questions that rises now with students as they think about essays
Hmm.
is, okay, what should I write? Because they hear out in space somewhere
Hmm.
that there are
Hmm.
taboo topics. I don't particularly feel that that's an appropriate term to use here, but they
Hmm.
hear, death, divorce, that kind of thing.
Hmm.
Now, is the coronavirus going to be a taboo topic for this year?
As I had this moment, I think it was last week, when I was like, oh boy, now we're going to hear about the coronavirus in personal statements. So, my advice that I always give to students, that yes, there are topics that are more commonly submitted.
Hmm.
Um, and there are times when those common topics are done really well because students address them in a way that makes it very personal, helps us to understand that why they selected that particular topic. But there are times when it is not done well, and that the students should have selected another topic. So they have to realize that the coronavirus impacted virtually everyone in the world. I mean, it really, it, there are not many places that will be untouched by this. So they have to think about that. And, you know, you know, can they talk about this in a way that will make them stand out in an application, in an applicant pool?
Well, and I think that's great advice. It matters less the general topic area, but more how you explore yourself and reveal how a particular situation has affected you. And the way you
Mm-hmm.
tell your story, I guess, is important. So,
Right, exactly. Yep.
what? No, I'm curious about something else here. If you were to encounter a 17-year-old, soon-to-be high school senior who is obviously bewildered and probably is feeling a sense of overwhelmness with regard to what's going on in the world right now, and then of course wondering, well, how's this college thing going to work?
Yeah.
What kind of advice would you have for that young person today?
Yeah. It's really interesting. So our neighbors, their oldest is a junior in high school,
Hmm.
and the school district decided to go pass fail for the rest of the semester.
Hmm.
And this young person was having a tremendous third quarter, like all A's, and like this was
A breakout.
really super excited about.
Yeah.
And now it's going to be pass fail. And I said, this, you have to remember that did not just happen to you, but this has happened to everyone. And that, all the, students are going, many students are going to be in the same situation that you're in. And that admissions officers are going to be understanding of that. It will be important for us to understand the decision the school made, and we will, not to judge one way or the other, but just so that we understand, did your school go to pass fail? Um, Finishing out AP Physics just wasn't going to work. Whatever those kinds of nuances might be for a particular school, that it's important that we know that. And again, not to judge, but so that we are able to fairly assess a student record.
Mm-hmm. So know that, sort of paraphrasing here, then, know that things are going to be okay, but you need to be thoughtful about the way you present the circumstance of your application
Yes,
as well.
exactly. Right.
Very good.
And I think it's really important for the students to have an understanding, kind of once they're able to, they're back in school and have those kind of conversations with their school counselors, for the school counselors to tell the students, this is how we're going to present what happened at the end of junior year, so that students really fully understand that, so they can kind of address their own personal circumstance in a way that meshes with the school.
Just a reminder that the process is indeed holistic, and that
Exactly
you're
right.
taking information from different places and trying to calibrate on who this young person is, or triangulate on who this young person is then. So when
Right.
we emerge from this this dark period, if you will, will we be back to business as usual, do you think, or will we have to find a new business?
It's really interesting. We actually had, so I'm meeting 3 times a week with the 2 folks who are kind of heading up our jumbo month. And one of them made that comment on Monday, like, it's going to be really interesting to kind of reflect on what we learn at the end of this month. And how are we going to approach, our recruitment efforts, both for prospective and admitted students. And I think we're going to learn some really valuable things. I don't think not having that kind of physical, ability to meet with students on campus, that's not going to go away, but we might learn about ways that are effective, to reach out to students in a virtual way that are helpful, but aren't intrusive, and not overwhelming.
So much to look forward to in that regard.
Yeah.
But it sounds like you've really found some interesting and creative ways to work through this process, and on behalf of the young people that you're working with. And it also sounds very much like you're projecting the university as part of the solution for them, rather than another obstacle to be cleared as they make their way to college. As we wrap things up, Susan, is there a resource, a website that you'd refer folks to as they'd like to get to know more about life at Tufts these days?
Yeah, so we have actually set up, I think it's like Visit Tufts virtually, on our Visit kind of tab, so that we give some resources to prospective students about how to see Tufts, but also we do have a 30-minute kind of introduction to Tufts done by, I think, about 10 of us that have different pieces kind of as an info session. Our tour guide page is really full with profiles of 40 of our tour guides. Again, a way for students to make some connections.
Wonderful. Well, I hope those who are listening will take heed and check out the website and get to know more of the people who make the place. And Susan, I want to thank you very much for taking time out of what is obviously a very busy day for you to help enlighten those who are in the college process right now. I've enjoyed this conversation, and I suspect those who have heard it will be benefited by it. Those who are interested in this series of conversations with teens, we hope to have more in the pipeline soon. But until then, I wish you all health and be safe and have a great day. Thank you very much.